everyone. Welcome to this episode of Association Transformation. We've started kicking off a new conversation, a transatlantic conversation about the impact and evolution of nonprofit organizations. This really is an unprecedented time, one of rapid innovation, and there's a special opportunity, we believe, in networking, in virtual networking and in online communities. And today we're going to dive into that. This conversation has been a fun collaboration and continues as a partnership until I decide to break up with him. This is a fun partnership between Andrew Chamberlain and I of Consort Strategies. And
I don't remember it being when's the fun bit actually? When's the fun bit start? Tell me about that. Go on.
Don't be too delicate. But so again, I'm Elisa Pratt with Brewer Pratt Solutions.
And I am rudely interrupting Elisa. I am Andrew Chamberlain, Managing Director of Consort Strategy.
And today I'm so excited about our special guest today, Marjorie Anderson, the Manager of Digital Communities for the Project Management Institute. She is someone I've followed both on her blog, her articles, obviously as someone who is really I think pushing the envelope of online communities, and I'm excited to have her with us because nothing is off limits as we discuss everything that is association, everything that is nonprofit. Marjorie, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
How do you come to us? Give us the elevator pitch.
So I am the manager of digital communities at Project Management Institute, and I also am the founder of Community by Association, which is a digital resource for community managers in the association and nonprofit space.
Awesome. And I mean, this has been what you do. Communities are what you do, bringing people together, whether it be members, non-members, associations, or otherwise. Communities is your thing, your language.
It is. It's something that I kind of fell into in 2013, and now it's work that I love dearly. I love it so much that I do it during the day and in the evening. So it's incredibly important to me.
Communities 24/7.
That's right.
Why? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't hate communities. I don't hate networks. Hate networking. Are we talking about the same thing? Are we talking about, is that what we're talking about?
Well, you're talking about the old-fashioned networking, the pre-COVID networking at a conference center or a hotel bar after the keynote session. You're talking about old-fashioned keynote or
well, you're talking about the one bit that I liked about networking was the hotel bar, but yeah, okay, go on.
But I think like PMI and like Marjorie, a lot of organizations have had to reimagine and reconsider what networking looks like. For most of my clients, networking is one of the top 5 things that they do for their members where they deliver value. It's part of their value proposition. And yet without in-person opportunities, they are either finding they're behind the curve or that they have an opportunity to fast forward into online engagement. And that's what Marjorie does.
And is that what you're seeing, Marjorie? Are you seeing a sort of juxtaposition between people who are falling behind the curve and those who are, early adopters or certainly trendsetters in terms of networking and community?
I am. I think one of the things that, especially when the pandemic hit, there were associations, and not just associations, but all kinds of organizations scrambling to figure out how do we bring people together, how do we keep them talking, how do we keep them connected, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to stand up an online community and hire a community manager to do it. So I think that, but there are some organizations who are already using online communities for those very reasons, and they had already built that trust that is needed to grow a really robust online community. So I think what's going to happen now is that these organizations who are now trying to catch up are going to find themselves in a position where they've stood up the community and they're expecting it to just be wow from day one, not understanding that community growth and that trust in community takes time. So it's not something that's going to happen in 6 months. You may not see a return on that time and that investment for maybe a year before you really start to see things moving. So I think that, my hope is that these organizations then don't say, well, community doesn't work. It does, but you have to give it time to grow.
Well, and that's if you've defined a purpose. I think a lot of people, they spend so much time talking about the technology and the platform And that's what the vendors want the conversation to be around is the tech. But what, I don't know, what comes first, the platform or the purpose?
The purpose has to come first. The purpose and the people. So why you're bringing those people together, and then who are the people you want to bring together. And then once you figure that out, everything else follows. You can't just launch technology and expect community to happen. That you will fail each and every time. But if you're clear on your purpose and you're clear on why you're bringing these folks together and who it is you're trying to bring into the community space to engage and what they're engaging around, that whole strategy needs to be built out before you can even think about technology. And then once you've got those things in place, you need to have a dedicated community manager to nurture that community and ensure that that community continues to grow and continues to thrive.
Wait a minute, this isn't something you can just throw to the marketing department or the communications and membership department and add to their list of to-dos. I think everyone assumes, oh, this will be no problem. I manage the Facebook page, I manage Twitter, and I do the online community. But I don't think that's how successful communities exist.
I don't know
It's
what
not.
I don't. Sorry to interrupt. I don't understand what it is. I don't think I've come across a community manager position in a UK context. Tell me what that is. Can you? Because I don't think I've ever heard of that job description.
Sure. So a community manager is someone who is responsible for the growth of an online community. So what that means is they are responsible for programming. They are responsible for any onboarding activities that take place for people who come into your community. They are responsible for setting the strategy. And then you've got, people underneath that community manager, like a moderator, who's then responsible for making sure that the tone of the community is set. You have that person is also making sure that people are connecting to the things that they need and to one another. So it's a when I think about what community management is, it's literally a team of people making sure that in the online space, those people feel as connected to your association and to each other as they do if they attend an event or if they go to a chapter meeting or if they go to, a member meeting. They're still doing those things only in the online space.
Right. Okay.
So, Andrew, are online communities not yet, have online communities not been defined as an opportunity or a necessity in UK based associations yet?
I think the reality is the geography of the UK doesn't really lend itself, or hasn't previously, pre-COVID, lent itself to online interaction. The reality is there's not many places in the UK that you can't get to, where you can't get to London, before a 9 or 10 o'clock meeting, and then get home, in the evening. So, the ease of transportation and the ability to get together, regardless of where you are in the UK, is just not a concern. Well, it hasn't been a concern. I think we were starting pre-COVID. We were starting to see that kind of, for financial reasons, starting to see people wanting to sort of have more, remote engagement. But certainly it's fledgling, to say the least. And I think that's one of the things that we've in a previous podcast, we've been talking about what does innovation look like in the UK. That whole principle of online community feels to me like a real innovation. Arguably, pan-national US associations, or pan-Canadian or Australian, South African networks where geography dictates that you need technology to be effective at a national level. In the UK, we're really quite far behind on it, and I've worked with many clients who've kind of, as you just rightly said, right, we're going to have a forum. And they stick it up, and it's like, yeah, and then it's like, no,
Just
and you're right, and it's because they've been sold a product, but they've not been sold a culture. So
Exactly.
I'm curious. When you've been talking, Marjorie, I'm curious. I'm thinking, well, an awful lot of what you describe for the community manager, the online community management role, which is fundamentally based on what individuals have done on a face-to-face basis, bring people together. Surely those entities, those organisations that have done a really good job of that physical engagement. Well, they don't have a problem, do they? Moving on to the virtual platform, or do they?
Some do because they're expecting that same sort of instant engagement to happen in an online forum where they haven't built that culture, like you said, right? So if you've got a long-standing event, like I'm sure the first event any organization put on, they didn't have thousands of people come who were ready to engage, who knew what they wanted to get out of it. Maybe they had a couple hundred people come and fill a couple of seats, and then as word caught on and things started to kind of move forward over the course of years, then people really started to see the value in that event and to go to it. It's the same thing with online communities. You have to set the stage for something great to happen. And you have to expect that maybe not everyone's going to show up. But you invite people in who are your super users, who are your champions, who are your ambassadors, and you help them get the conversations going. And as that continues to prove out value to people who engage, they'll bring along more people will come, and then that culture starts to develop itself along with the help of the community manager and your moderators and your community team. But it's not something that you just flash and then it just automatically starts. You gotta grow it and build it.
And there's a business model to this. I think about that senior staff table and the eye rolls that would come from some of the more revenue focused members of staff.
Okay. So you're just talking about me now, right? You just because I was that chief executive. I was that person who would sit there.
Right.
Going,
Where's
oh
the
my
revenue?
God,
What's the ROI
right, yeah.
of this? And if it's going to be quote unquote fluffy, but where can we? Don't spit your water out.
It's like you've been sat in meetings with me, honestly. So you're quoting me verbatim now.
I know
all that
all your
soft,
complaints.
fluffy, all that engagement stuff. Where's the cash?
But online communities have been around for a long time. Pre-COVID,
Yep.
and I think to your point, geography may have been a necessity, but now there's an opportunity, and there can be revenue here, even if it's member only. And I don't know what Marjorie's views are on public communities versus member only communities, but there is a business model here, right? I mean, there's a case to be made for communities providing revenue and membership growth, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Communities really set the stage for further engagement, whether that be additional membership revenue, whether that be certification revenue, whether that be other non-dues revenue. It's really a breeding ground for discovery. And what happens is you can build a community model where it's almost like a teaser. For instance, the community that I manage for Project Management Institute is pretty much a freemium model. So anyone can register within the online community and get access to blogs and articles and discussion threads. But we also hold webinars that are member only webinars. So if you want to get those, you have to sign up for membership. We have virtual events that are member only. In order to get access to those, you have to purchase membership. So not only that, but then we are able to connect people to other products that we provide, so that people can kind of see, okay, there's some continued value with engaging with this organization, because these are some things that I can take advantage of, if I so choose. If I don't, there's still a place for me to come. And one day that person may convert, one day they may not, but you still positioned yourself as the go-to resource for the things that they need to be successful.
But there has to be a balance. I mean, it can't be an infomercial and a marketing channel all the time.
Right. Right.
No,
So
it
this
can't.
is
It can't be. You're right, Elisa. It's that's how I would use it. But yeah, okay.
I know that's what I'm trying to get her to shut down your purely financially driven motives.
right, because if that's what it becomes, then people are going to find somewhere else to go, right? Then you're no longer a valuable place for them to come and connect with others who are facing the same challenges, or find content that's really going to help them be more successful. You're just a marketing channel, and they're like, I don't want any part of that. So there is the balance. You have to make sure that you're providing them an opportunity to connect with one another, to share knowledge, because at the end of the day, that's how they learn best, right? Your community and your members are going to learn from one another. They don't need you constantly pushing information and content at them. This is an opportunity for them to show their expertise and get connected to the things and the people within their global community that are going to help them.
To counter this perception you have of me that I'm only interested in pound signs or dollar signs, depending on what the conversion rate is. Obviously, I absolutely recognise that the greatest value, the best way of demonstrating value of an organisation is to give value, and then you create this virtuous cycle whereby people put in, they get out, they put in, they get out, and the money does, from a financial perspective, the money does flow. But if I'm sat here today now as a chief exec, and I'm thinking, right, it's post-COVID, we've been pretty poor in terms of our online provision in the past, and now I'm agreeing. Yes, we've got to have our community needs to be properly set up, properly established, understood, articulated, marketed, and the value needs to be demonstrated. You now turn around and say to me, but that's going to take a year at least before we get any kind of real return on it, both financial or non-financial benefits. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but we're in a crisis mode now, so that's not good to me. So how do we counter that? Because you can imagine.
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first thing that you want to do when you're taking a look at what's the value to the organization is you have to connect before you even start. You have to connect the goals of the community to the organization goals, right? So once you've made that connection, then those ties you can see, even if you may not see a revenue change for a year from the online community, I can see that there are going to be 600, 1,000 more people coming into kind of like our sphere that weren't there before, and they are
Right, more
discovering.
touches.
Yep,
Yeah, more
and they are.
impact, more touches, more value.
Exactly. So it's acting like a funnel. You're starting to pull people in and then pull them along the journey. And this gives you the opportunity to then say, oh, you're new to the online community. Welcome. You might also benefit from X, Y, and Z. So get them into a chapter meeting. They might not join the chapter, but they're getting exposure to what membership looks like. They're getting exposure to what other products, certifications look like. Invite them to another type of event. They're getting exposure to all of that.
So you would use it as a marketing pipeline then?
You could, but this is what I say. I wrote a piece that was called "Stop Telling Marketing to Go Away," because the same way in which a community manager would say, come into our community, we have all these wonderful things, you would still want to expose your community to all of the things that your association, that your organization offers. It does no one any justice to have this community and just say, this is just for the members, marketing, you go away. No, but there's a smart way in order to bring that information to their attention. It's less about, here, buy this thing, and more about, hey, we know that, say project management is going to be a key skill in the next few years. We have this piece of thought leadership that explains all of that, and then you can get people engaged that way. I always say position anything that you want to get in front of community members as content, explain the value that it has to them and how it's going to help make them more successful, and that's how you get their buy-in. It's less about, here, buy this thing, and more about, here's how this is going to help you.
Well, you mentioned in one of the examples you gave, you mentioned, join the chapter. And when I think about chapters and I think about those networks of affiliates, there's what I see with my smaller clients is they're using LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, and that's not real estate they really own. Those can be pulled out from under them at any time. And so I love what you've done, not only with Community by Association, but also with PMI. And I encourage all my clients to, if you're going to do this, if you've done all the pre-work and you know the purpose and you know who you want to reach out to and target, do it within your own environment. Is that then cost prohibitive? I mean, are there low cost tools that a small to medium association can use to bring in their own community?
Can I interrupt before you answer that, Marjorie? Can you just explain to me a bit more what you mean by do it within in your own environment? Are you talking about an echo chamber?
Yeah, so it's more about investing in technology that you can control, like a community platform versus a Facebook or a
Right. Yeah.
LinkedIn, because you can't control what happens there. Yeah. So with online community platforms, if you don't have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in order to create that sort of engagement through an online community platform. There are some that are very expensive and they're very good. There are some that are less expensive and are very good. The one that I use for community by association is not an expensive platform at all, has great features, keeps my folks engaged. It's easy for them to use, it's easy to find. The one that we are using for PMI is also a great platform, and it's not within my budget if I was going to be bootstrapping it. So you don't have to break the bank in order to create that sort of engagement in a way that is going to work best for you. That's not sitting on a platform that you have no control over. And I always tell people, yes, you want to meet folks where they are, but long term, don't keep your community in a place where your hands are really tied when it comes to things like privacy, when it comes to things like customizing your community, when it really comes to building it out and scaling it up. It's social media is not really the best way to go, I don't think.
One of those things I see organizations struggle with is the segmentation and how many different conversations and separate groups does their audience need to have? Because one group has a successful group, but they want it to be more about them. How much segmentation is too much? And is that a good problem to have that you're not dealing with till you're well established?
Yeah, I think that I think that too much segmentation really defeats the purpose of a community. I mean, bringing people together is really the whole purpose of a community. And then what's the purpose of bringing them together and then segmenting them out so they can have special conversations? I think that if you look at what the need is in terms of, okay, why would we segment it out, right? Why would we have a separate group within the community to have a separate conversation versus just having it as part of the holistic discussions that happen there? Um, I think there has to be a balance. I think there's definitely value in maybe segmenting out region specific conversations within your online community, but make sure they stay in your online community. So there's a group in the online community that speaks specifically to the EMEA folks who are experiencing something in a specific way. But at the end of the day, they can still come back out to the online community and have general conversations, and people who are part of the online community can then find their way to
Hmm.
that group if they need to. But I think that there should be some rationale behind how many of those segmented groups you have within your online community, because at that point you don't have a community if everybody's off doing their own thing.
So I'm guessing with in a US context, the online community, you don't split that into geographic groupings, then, do you? Because I know, again in the UK, geography, it's not really appropriate. It doesn't really work for us. But I know that regional geographic chapters are a mainstay of the association model in the US and in Canada and Australia. But I'm presuming your online communities, they don't reflect that, do they? They don't need to, surely.
Don't you
No.
see more kind of career path, different titles
Yeah.
or
Good. Good.
places in
Yeah.
your career?
Yeah.
I think the geography piece, I know on the trade association side, different geographies allow would-be competitors who may not be serving the same marketplace to talk best practices without concern. You know, a specialist in New York can talk to a specialist in San Diego and share ideas without feeling like they're emboldening a competitor because the
Yeah.
geography is
Yeah.
separate enough. So I think the geography works to your benefit in a larger group. But I don't know, Marjorie, what you're seeing. I think geography is a necessary divide sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we try to keep Unless it's something super super specific. Like for instance, we've got folks in our Asia Pac region who have specific focuses that they're looking at in Japan. So we want to create a space for them to be
Yeah.
able to cultivate that conversation. But if there's a project manager in New York speaking to a project manager in California or one in Australia, then share best practices, figure out what's going to work for you so that, you can help each other be more successful. I think one of the things that we had previously, we had a COP model, and we had 36 separate communities of practice. It was a little bit disjointed of an experience, but we brought all what that community told us was we needed one place to be able to come together and have those conversations. And in 2015 we changed our community model and provided that, and that's how we're going to continue providing community for folks.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, Australia and Japan. Can online communities, COVID or otherwise, I really don't want this to just be a COVID conversation, but can online communities be the point of your international strategy spear? I mean, can this be how you maybe baby step into international markets?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the great thing about online communities is that they're online and you don't have to be anywhere at any specific time in order for those conversations to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I love that, especially for those small and medium or organizations that are so concerned about the loss of their in-person events. This gives them that silver lining potentially.
Yep.
But knowing that we want this to survive after COVID, how would online communities fit into that larger networking and engagement when whenever we get back to those in-person events? Can it survive?
Absolutely. I would gladly sit at the hotel bar, tweeting and LinkedIn. Absolutely. I could do that every time.
Yeah, it absolutely can survive. The thing is though that as organizations are strategizing for the now, they need to be thinking long term as well. So, one of the great things about online communities is that you can get people connected before they even make it to your live event. So you can set up a discussion forum or a special group for people attending your annual meeting and host virtual meet and greets there, and then that way they know each other once they get to the live event. You can do sneak peek webinars within the online community to give people a taste of the content that they're going to experience at a live event.
Oh, I like
There's
that.
all
That's good.
kinds
That's
of
cool.
way Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can create engagement before people have even made it to your live event. That way they're super excited once they get on site. So there's absolutely a place for online community. And then after the event, bring them back to the online community to continue to have conversation about what they learned.
So do we think, so other than, I just want to go back to a point that you made earlier on, Elisa. You said you were speaking about the member and the non-member, the public sort of facing aspect of this. And I don't think Marjorie got a chance to answer that. And, I can see the obvious benefits of using our online community, but I can see the obvious membership value and I can see the obvious business value. But there is a perennial question around member and non-member access to all membership services, and it's always sort of debated at strategy discussions and what have you. Do you think there's value in? Should we always aim? Rather, let me rephrase that. Should we always aim ultimately for our community to be exclusive, or should we welcome the non-member to our community and recognize that that's where they'll stay?
I think there's definite value in bringing non-members into your community. That way, it doesn't feel like unless the goal is for your association to feel extremely exclusive and, untouchable. I think that there's value in having non-members um, engage because there's an opportunity there for them to then convert to membership or convert to some other sort of um, product or any take advantage of anything else that provides non-dues revenue. But at the end of the day, it's really about acting as a resource to the people that you serve within any specific industry or any specific trade or profession. um, it should not be something that we look at as we'll only provide value to you if you're spending money to us as a member. I think there are perks you can offer members as part
Yeah.
of that engagement, but I
Hmm.
don't think that it ever makes sense to shut people out just because they don't spend money with you.
Well, and I think of that funnel,
Yep.
that funnel image that you mentioned earlier, in terms of just expanse. But you're right. It's that purpose. What's your purpose? Who are you serving? And are people with simple interest in your area? Will they convert? Will they buy something? Will they act with respect and reverence in the community? So you don't want to have to start throwing non-members out.
Right. And if they don't, that's okay. Then you can just you spend the time on the people who are spending time with you and really putting into you, but at least there's still a place for those folks to go if they need something, if they need answers, if they need resources, if they need access to information. That's the least, very least we could be for those folks.
And so I just have before we wrap up, one more question about conversion rates. Is there data that demonstrates the kind of conversion from non-member to member, or worse, from member to non-member? you know,
I,
that's because of online, because of the online community.
yeah, there's a report that comes out every year from the Community Roundtable that kind of benchmarks the business value that online communities provide to organizations. And it's called the State of Community Management Report. And what it does is it shows across industries how communities aid in that sort of conversion, right? And then from an individual level, if you kind of drill down into community specific metrics, there are metrics that community managers can build and should be building into what they're measuring against that show um, where people are coming in and then kind of how they're going through that journey. And they have to be working cross functionally to
Hmm.
kind of show that information. But there's absolutely that's absolutely something that should be top of mind for any community manager who is especially speaking about how online communities provide value to their organization.
Hmm.
That always has to be top of mind. It's something that I will always say and speak. And I think that as community managers, sometimes we get a little precious about our communities, and we're like, oh, but it's about the people. It is about the people, but you also need to be providing value. So,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
but I would certainly check out the State of the Community Management Report. It really does a beautiful job of showing where those benchmarks are and how online communities provide value to
Fantastic.
organizations.
And you can download that online.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. We'll make sure that we reference that when we put the pod out, because I certainly want, because yeah, because I
He
want to know how
needs
much money
data
can
to
be
really
made. I
believe in
need
this. Yeah.
data to
He
believe
needs
in it.
data to
Yeah.
believe in this.
Surely
That
there's more.
12-month time, that 12-month evolution for this to become
Absolutely,
valuable.
absolutely.
He needs
So
those
that
metrics.
when I'm strat planning with any management team or boards, I can say actually there's evidence that demonstrates that there's member value and there's financial return, because like I always say, we're not for profit, but we're also not for loss. We always have to
Right.
make sure that we're sustainable. So any data we have that can demonstrate multiple benefits to an association or organization is critical. So excellent. Yeah, we'll make sure we reference that.
Does that divide up the difference between the results of organizations that have a community manager and those who do not? Because I know you're a big proponent for that as a professional, investment. We community managers are real subject matter experts that are necessary to achieve those highest metrics.
It doesn't, but I'll tell you, there's an interesting thread that Rich Millington put out on Twitter last week, and he's the founder of Feverbeat, which is a UK-based community management consultancy, and he had a community manager for his community, and she transitioned to another role, and his community was robust, people were engaging, and he thought, you know what, I'll let those folks just do their thing. I'm not going to replace my community manager right now. And what he found was, even though the community was pretty much self-sufficient, without a community manager, engagement declined drastically. It was quite eye opening. And so, while that research does not speak to community manager versus non community manager, there's all sorts of data out there that speaks to why you must have a community manager in place. I firmly believe that you can't just stand up a community and be like, "Hey, membership specialists, why don't you go manage that?" They're trying to get membership numbers up. They may not have the skills needed or necessary to manage
Yeah.
an online community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's easy to, to throw the kind of function in with the rest and say, oh, it's just a membership. It's a membership officer position. It's like, okay, well, you wouldn't put a conference or an event meetings manager in the same sort of context as your financial manager. So why would you possibly put your community manager in with the same as someone who's running the membership services elsewhere? Different types of membership
Right.
services. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time this week. I really appreciate it, Marjorie. Certainly, you have convinced me as a cynical, financial focused, profit driven chief executive that any client I work with, I am genuinely going to be saying because it's not, as I said, in the UK, this is not a. Certainly, it's not as prevalent in the UK sector as it is in yours. So I'll certainly be talking about this, and hopefully we'll have a chance to bring you in some more discussions in the future. So thank you very much for your time, Marjorie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to be a part of it. I'll tell people anytime you give me 5 minutes to talk about community, I'll talk about it for 5 hours. It's something I'm super passionate about.
And that's interesting because at least it's the same about cocktails.
Stop. Stop. Maybe, 5 minutes, 5 hours. I don't know. That's the conversion.
She messaged me on Friday afternoon. It was like 3:30 in DC. I'm having a cocktail right now. I'm like, I'm surprised you waited so late. My goodness me.
I do usually use London time.
Yeah, that's right. It's 5 o'clock in the world somewhere. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, and to our listeners, we hope you'll join us next time and every time that we deliver one of our regular pods. If you've enjoyed listening, do please find us on. Search for Association Transformation or wherever you find your pods. Apple, Google, Spotify. We're all there. But also you can download all our episodes on the YouTube channel. If there's a subject you want us to explore, or if you want to join us on the pod, then do please tweet us at Association Transformation, or you can email us at hello@yourconsort.com. And we'll absolutely draw on our network to pull together a pod that we think is worth listening to. And if I think that's it, isn't it? I think other than to say once again, thank you so much to Andy, our producer, who's just kept me on time by constantly just tapping his wrist at me for the last 20 minutes. And to Elisa, obviously, thank you. And Marjorie, thank you once again. Until next time, stay safe and stay connected.